Hey, it's Kendrick with Technology Interpreters, and welcome to the SentinelOne complete course on endpoint detection and response. I have Jabari with me from the Technology Interpreter Cybersecurity Mentorship Program, and Jabari is going to be hanging out. And Jabari, feel free to ask any questions. But let's go ahead and get started. We're going to be covering the settings menu, and this is part 11. So you mean that's 10 other parts, and we've covered everything from an overview of the complete console all the way through all of these settings. And then we got so many videos to come on specific things like adding users, adding sites, mitigating malware. So we're going to be going deep into SentinelOne. So this may turn out to be 50 parts at this point. Okay. So anyway, let's go ahead and get started. Let's talk a little bit about the settings menu. So right now, the configuration menu, I don't have access to that. Okay. So unfortunately, I can't show that. But what I can do is I can show you a couple of menus that we're going to start off with the notifications right here at the top. And as far as the notifications menu, what this does is it basically gives you an indicator of all the different things we can alert on. And we have two options here. We can do emails, so every time one of these events happens, you'll get an email, or syslog, which means you send it to like a SIM, or like if you have like a SOC that monitors your network, you can send these logs to them, and then they can then monitor those, add threat intelligence and stuff like that, and be able to sift through this information for indicators of compromise, and even using APIs to be able to dynamically take actions and stuff like that once they do have a detection. So anyway, so that's basically your two options. And then Pierre is logging into the console. Pierre's here. Welcome, Pierre. So we also got Pierre from the Cybersecurity Mentorship Program. So anyway, let's go ahead and go down the menu. So we'll talk a little bit about some of the notifications. So Active Directory, for those of you that are not sure what Active Directory is, it's basically, I don't know if you've ever been in, if you're in college, you probably kind of come across it, or maybe if you are working in an office or a office type job where you have to log into your network, and there's kind of like a server you have to log into, and now that's in the cloud. But basically Active Directory, it kind of houses the user list and authenticates people who want to log in to company resources. We also have on the administrative, okay, lots of alerts coming through, on the administrative menu. And once again, you have these two AD configuration actions, connector actions, AD exposure actions. So don't really have AD integration set up, so not really something I can show, and also haven't really worked with that one. Administrative, these I have worked with quite a bit, so notification, recipients, modify. So that means if I go to the recipients tab here and modify this, it's going to send me a notification. And any of these categories, feel free to slow down and go through these, but I'll just kind of like make a list. I mean, I'll kind of let you see them. Even like this account uninstall password. So if I want to uninstall SentinelOne on my machine, I have it like in protection mode. And if I want to allow the user to uninstall it, then what the user will do is I'll have to give them a password.
Okay.
All right, so Jabbar, you had a question. You said you wanted me to scroll back up. What did you have a question on?
At the top is what says users.
Which
I know
one?
you're in you're in notifications right now,
Uh-huh.
but if you scroll back, it look like the user is kind of like purple, but you're in your notifications. That's
I
just
mean, notifications, yeah, but it does have a line under you. That's weird. Because it's
okay, right?
there,
Yeah, that's
yeah,
confusing me.
but I am actually in notifications. Yeah. Okay, good looking
Okay,
out.
cool.
That is weird.
All right.
So anyway, so custom rules. If we create custom rules and if somebody modifies, deletes the rules, we can see that. Device control, that deals. We talked about that in the previous video. That deals with blocking USB drives and Bluetooth devices. So should the rules get modified, deleted, or anything like that, a block event happens or allow event happens, we can notify all that. And if you notice, I've got all of this turned on. The reason why is because I have the cybersecurity mentees in the console all the time. I want to be able to know when they logging in, what they're doing, so I can kind of hold them accountable and also make sure they don't break anything, right? Endpoint tagging. So this, if you can, once again, we talked a little bit about the tagging feature, but you can add these different tags to the endpoint. And if you create a tag, delete a tag, this will all send a notification. Firewall control, locations, malware. The thing is, we'll get into the details of what my recommendations will be for configuring notifications, but for this section, this is something you definitely want to have turned on. It's like anything related to the malware events. This is probably good to have turned on. Basically, these are detections. So cloud marked as threat, marked as benign, mitigated. Let's see, not mitigated, malicious. So these are things that are going to generate alerts. And then under the mitigation action, we kill if SentinelOne automatically kills or a user kills, network quarantines, remediate. This is the core right here. So you definitely want to have that turned on. Operations, this is accounts created and stuff like that. Agent subscribed, agent updated, those type of things. Auto upgrade, deleted. So these more just different functions. Looks like exclusion import, fetch file operation. So these are all on that Sentinel's menu, or many of these are on the Sentinel's menu that we discussed in a previous video when we talked about Sentinel. So look at that video if you're interested, have some more details. Rogues, okay, so we can see Ranger deployed. So we initiated Ranger master passphrase attempt. I guess it's the Ranger. I don't know. I'm not sure about that one. Create group actions. If you know exactly about this, please drop that in the comments. Definitely help the community. Device review, device tags modified, and this is Ranger and rogue detection, fingerprints label modified. So these are specific things related to the Ranger function, which we talked about earlier. And essentially, Ranger detects things on your network. Like if I come in and somebody comes in right now, jumps on my Wi-Fi or plugs into my network, I'm going to get an alert from SentinelOne. They're going to detect it like, yo, who are you? Who is this guy? And they say, yo, this new guy just jumped on our network, this new person, right? And then they're going to report on it. Remote shell, this is good. You definitely want to have this turned on because SentinelOne has remote shell built in, so you can't remote into people's machine. And if that happens, you probably want to get alerts on it, all right? Threat management. Threat management, this is one of those things like, let's see, an analyst verdict. So when we look at the malware, we can determine if we think it's conclusive, like it's malicious, if it's benign, those type of things. Those are our analyst verdicts. Incident status, so we can say we marked it as suspicious, we marked it as a threat, those type of things. And then exclusions, certain things we might see that files or folders or hashes like are getting detected and we think that they're actually safe. And so we have the ability to mark these devices as exclusions, to add exclusions for them. And so in a nutshell, if somebody's adding exclusion, they could also add exclusions for bad stuff and essentially allow them to run some malicious software, malware, on the machine. So you really would want to probably monitor if people are adding exclusions for accountability, for insider type threats. And keep in mind, that's a real thing. Now, with that being the case, I'm going to go to the recipients tab. I'm going to blur this out. The recipients tab, this is basically where you set up the notifications. So I can set up who these email notifications go to. So right now, I have my address in here. But the thing is, if I were to go through the console and look at some of the other tenants, you will see different addresses for the other cybersecurity mentees. But essentially, everywhere where you see there's email notification, if any of these events happen, it goes to somebody who's in the recipient list, okay? On the users tab, these are where I create users who have access to the console. Now, within these groups on the left, each of these users is created, but essentially they're created within a certain tenant, okay? Some people may be created at the top level and have top level access to all the other. And so remember, keep in mind, treat these as different companies because we are MSSP, or a managed security service provider, which means we provide security services to other companies. And so I'm saying that because, like I said, I'm using this. No, I'm not doing this with this training. This is just, I have this, but this pretty much duplicates what I use at work in my normal job. And so these are within our normal console. We got many companies throughout here, and each one of them has a list of users who have access to it, but you don't want users from company A being able to see stuff in company B. So you don't put things at the top level. We just put things in company A, company B, and they can only see everything inside their company. Even if they're administrators inside their own site. And these are over here are referred to as sites. Okay. All right. And then as far as this, and that's users. And of course, we can go through service users. I don't have access to it here, but I do use service users in work. I've created many service users. And so the thing is, a service user is like, maybe I need to create an API key so that another program can interface with SentinelOne. That's one of the uses that we use at work all the time for the service user. And because if you create an API key with a regular user account, it actually expires every 30 days. You have to regenerate it. So it's forcing you to create service users because you can create these API keys for up to a year. But consider this a service account. And then roles, there are many roles here. And unfortunately, you'll see, you can kind of see, I'm going to blur a lot of this out because this is stuff from the MSSP that I buy this console from in order for me to serve other companies in theory, right? But you can see that these are all the different roles, and you can go to actions, and I can't duplicate or create roles, but essentially you could at that level. So, but I at least want you to know that it's there. Integrations. This one is good because SMTP. So say for instance, I want to be able to send stuff to a mail server, then I would essentially use the SMTP function to be able to send mail to a mail server. Okay, so this is basically if there's a notification or something like that, I want to be able to like bounce that through what's typically called an SMTP relay, and then it would be able to send those messages or email to somebody. But this isn't. You can see I can disable this feature, right? And you can kind of see what it's using here. Probably going to blur this out because that actually has a username, and there you can go in and change. So I'm not going to mess with this because this is essentially how it's probably using the email server, because once again, it's probably using the email system or the MSSP who's providing this console to me to send it. So this is their SMTP server, and it's using like port 587, which means it's secure. And then syslog. So syslog, if I wanted to be able to send this to a SIM like Splunk or the SOC or something like that, and for them to monitor, then I would enable syslog. You have to put the IP address of the host. And if I'm not mistaken, this is where you need to put the port over here for your host. So IP address and port. Syslog does have a standard port. I don't remember what it is right now, but I can quickly take a, it's a well-known port. So what is it? Cisco, by default, syslog protocol works over 514. Okay. And then of course I can select, so it will use TLS to kind of make sure it's secured. And then formatting, don't know enough about the formatting and stuff like that to give you any kind of advice there. And then single sign-on, if I wanted to integrate this with single sign-on like Okta or something like that, then I can enable this and I can go in and walk through these different steps. Probably going to use SAML 2.0 authentication. Jabari, I don't know if y'all played with this. Y'all integrated this, right? You chose the SAML option, correct?
Yeah, 2.0 for Okta, yeah.
Okay, so basically, and so the cybersecurity mentees have already gone through like integrating and using SSO to be able to log into their console here. But you can see this is some of the details, and you have to copy these assertions and these values, copy those over to put them in Okta, bring some of the values from Okta over here, and then you're set up. And basically, anytime you try to go log into your SentinelOne console, it'll redirect you to Okta to authenticate. But you don't have to remember, you just have to remember your Okta password and not your SentinelOne password anymore, because that's what single sign-on does. Policy override, I have it at work. We don't have it here, but I can tell you what policy override does. And pretty much essentially policy override is, it allows us to be able to tell certain parts of the artificial intelligence or AI detection engine to chill out. So we've had instances, say for instance, where somebody plugs a USB drive, or I'm sorry, a USB headset into the computer, and blue screens because there's something in the SentinelOne function. It's not an actual detection, but something in the way that SentinelOne kind of takes control of the USB drivers. Because remember, SentinelOne has to be able to, if you enable device control, SentinelOne can block USB and Bluetooth devices. So that means it's essentially secured some control over the USB drivers. And what was happening is that with certain headsets, it would literally cause the computers to lock up and crash and all kind of crazy stuff when they plugged in to use their headsets. And so there was no actual detection. It was just the fact that it was a conflict because SentinelOne had control over that driver. And so we had to go and work with SentinelOne. They sent us what's called a policy override, which basically they identified what the problem was, and they were able to tell that detection engine. And you remember you have like static detection, you have the script detection engine, and there are several others that we went over in a previous video. But essentially, it tells that to stop doing what it was doing that was causing those Bluetooth headsets to crash. We put the policy override in. They're working. No issues from that point forward. Accounts. Essentially, you can see my account name is up here. It's been up here for every video. And the DNM, what the MSSP that sells me the console does is they put DNM for do not monitor, because they know that I use this for YouTube and stuff like that. And so this is where if I had multiple accounts, say for instance, if I bought this console directly from SentinelOne instead of from a middle customer, a middle salesman, right? Because once again, you have to be a certain size to buy it directly from SentinelOne. But if I were them, and if this is their console, the ones who I bought it from, since they buy straight from SentinelOne, then they probably have my account and a whole other bunch of accounts here. And that's what makes SentinelOne so nice, is because the hierarchy and the structure works so well. It's so well thought out that I absolutely love it. And this is somebody who used to be really, really a CrowdStrike fanboy, but not anymore. So anyway, so this is where you can see accounts. I can't create it. Wait, did you see how, what's going on? The button turns blue, but there's nothing they can do for me, okay? It just makes me think that I can. So, but anyway, this is where you would be able to create new accounts if we actually own the console directly from SentinelOne. Maybe one day I'll be, popular enough, cool kid to be able to do that. And then sites, this is where we go to create new sites. And just like the cybersecurity mentees have their own site, we can come in here, we'll say site one, we'll put a description here, and then we go next. Then we can select, I want this to be a trial. And this is good because the thing is, if we have customers who we want to try SentinelOne, do a proof of concept, then that's a good reason that most of these enterprise products will allow you to do a trial. Now that's really nice. You can probably exploit that. Now you say expire, we probably want to set an expiration date here, but most time we're going to do like a paid tenant, and you can go in here and then we'll set this for like a year out. You know what I'm saying? So I click on here, 2024 August, and today is the 17th. So we'll set this expire for a year because that's typically a lot of times you're going to sign like a 1-year contract, sometimes a 2-year, 3-year contract with these different companies. But you want this tenant or this site to expire, and that coincide with when the end of the contract is, right? So if they don't renew, you don't keep giving them services for free, or you can set it to not expire. I don't recommend doing this. And then for the SKU, this is going to be very common. SentinelOne Complete. And what I do is for the cybersecurity mentees to keep them from just going crazy, because once again, I get, 10, I've already paid for 10 devices. So if they go crazy and they install like 15, 20 devices in there, then next month I'm going to get a bill from Ariate Advisors saying, okay, we just noticed you increased your SentinelOne agents to this, and here you got to pay for the difference, right? So what I do is I use this to restrict them to one device, because I know how many in my console, and I created, and I definitely am not selecting unlimited license. So restricted to one total agent. And then what I can do is I can enable this remote script orchestration, because that's a feature we're probably going to be doing videos on. So I want to make sure that's available. And I haven't done it for everybody, but I definitely want to make sure I give that feature to them. But we have Ranger available. I have it in my tenant, but it's not available for me to give it to when I create new sites, as you can see. Now, even if I do a trial, sometimes doing a trial, they'll enable all features, but not in this case. So then when I click next here, I get a chance to go in, and now I can create the policy, so I can kind of break the inheritance, because it tends to inherit from the higher levels of the console. And I can go ahead and start configure the initial default policy and how that one worked. And then I go ahead and go through this. And once again, we're going to go through all of this. We'll talk through all of this and creating sites and everything. And I'll create the site. But in the meantime, I'm going to go ahead and quit this because I don't want to create a new site right now. And then locations, and locations are pretty cool because essentially now I haven't used locations, but I get the gist of it. And I think you will too. So what you can do is, it says if an endpoint is in this location if at least one parameter is true. Keep that in mind. At least one parameter is true. So we'll give it a name, give it a description. So we can say if one of the IP addresses, if one of the endpoint's IP addresses matches a defined address, okay, then it will be a part of this site. If all of the endpoint's IP addresses matches, and if none matches, this is part of the site. And we can do that for IP addresses, DNS servers, DNS resolution, okay. Endpoint can resolve at least one DNS host name. Network interface, we can say if it has wired or wireless, it's part of this site. So you can essentially divide your infrastructure up into a site based on like what type of device it is. And then on top of this, SentinelOne connection, if it's connected, it's part of the site. Why is that helpful? Well, what if I want to run something against this, but I don't want to have to go through and filter down to all of the devices that are actually online. But if I wanted to be able to like always be able to target this and just run this exclusively on devices online, that could possibly be helpful. But once again, haven't necessarily applied sites, but going through this, we will be doing some very specific videos once I finish this one. So this is the last of this part of just going through every last one of the menu items on the left. Now we're going to jump into some very specific tasks in the upcoming video. So be sure to subscribe for the series, because I need y'all to at least understand all these console items first before I get into the nitty gritty and this, okay? And then we can say finally on this one, if a registry key, and if you don't know what the registry, if you go to your computer and you type regedit, R-E-G-E-D, you need to know this. Regedit, okay, registry editor, not editor. You can run as administrator, or you can right click it and run as administrator. It will open up the computer's registry. Have fun, learn it, because you do need to understand registry keys, because So many, I would say many vulnerabilities require you to be able to like change registry keys to be able to mitigate the threat of that vulnerability. And folks, let me cancel this. That's it. If you want mentorship like Jabari and Pierre, the link to the cybersecurity mentorship program is in the description. It's not cheap, but it's really good. It does the job. I don't take a lot of people. I take a few good people. And just because somebody comes to the mentorship program and they want to mentor and they're willing to pay it, if I see personality flaws and things like that that concern me, I don't deal with egotistical narcissists and all that stuff. You know what I'm saying? Because what I find is those people, if they do start to get to prominence and do good and get some knowledge, they become really a menace to other people in the field. So I'm really looking for people who are humble and who want to continue to learn and who are really to work hard, like PR and Jabari and Daniel and maybe somebody else in the future. So anyway, this is Kendrick. Thanks so much for watching the video. Thank y'all for supporting the channel. Shout out to everybody that came over from LinkedIn too. Appreciate y'all supporting me from LinkedIn. And that's it for this video. I'll see you with some more detailed videos. We're getting into the nitty gritty now. See you.